All right, welcome. So, it's Dr. Schiller, and I want to talk about the disease process and the healing process. The process of developing chronic pain, disabling diseases, and chronic degenerative diseases. To give a little insight on how actually a person can better cope and deal with those things. I saw a question on Quora the other day, and the person asked, tell me the names of some diseases that are worse than fibromyalgia. And, it's sort of an interesting question. I see how someone could wonder that. But when you actually understand the situation, what's clear is that the question is kind of irrelevant because there's two things. There's a disease process, and then there's the way that a human being relates and deals with that. And there are people who get a diagnosis of fibromyalgia or chronic pain or CRPS or other really difficult stuff who take kind of a passive path to dealing with that. And yeah, they go to the doctor because they're suffering and they take the drugs or they get the procedures. But if those don't work, then they just sort of feel helpless and they get sick and worse. And they frequently spiral down. And I'm going to explain that in a little bit. But then there are people who get something like a diagnosis of fibromyalgia or an autoimmune disease or arthritis, and they get proactive. And they start to learn, well, what is this? What causes this? Why is this happening to me? And what can I do to change it? That's what I want to talk about a little bit in this little video here with you. Because what we know is that the world is not like they taught me in medical school. You don't have a digestive system and a nervous system and an immune system and a hormonal system. You have you. And you are all of those things. And whether you want to believe that there's something beyond the physical you, some degree of vitality or soul, or just a deep intelligence that's imbued in you through millions of years of evolution, the belief systems don't matter so much. But the important thing is to realize that the most scientific view and understanding is that all of our systems are profoundly interconnected. And your well-being depends on that interconnection and that deeply exquisite regulation and balance from all of those different systems. You are a miracle of what we call homodynamic mechanisms, meaning the system has a set point and it learns how to keep itself around that set point. Your heart rate varies between 65 and 75 or whatever, and your temperature varies here and there. Your thyroid hormones varies. Everything's got a cycle to it, and the cycles are entrained with each other. The cycles are entrained with sleeping and waking, with feeding and not feeding. The cycles are entrained with the light cycle. Right? The lightness, when the sun comes up and it's light out, that goes into your brain and shifts your chemistry throughout your body. And when it gets dark, you have a different chemistry. Cycles of physical activity and rest, cycles of stress and relaxation, cycles of get up and go and do and deal with stuff, maybe deal with danger, and then cycles of resting and healing and connecting and feeling good. And health is the health of those cycles and the interaction of all those miraculous parts of your being, which are one thing. And yeah, it's helpful to also think that you've got a gastrointestinal system because you need to go to a gastroenterologist sometimes to do a colonoscopy. And it's helpful to see a rheumatologist perhaps because you might have really bad inflammatory disease in your joints. And if you don't get it stopped soon, your joints are going to get sick. And so sometimes we need that model, which is based around separate organ systems and treating separate organ system diseases. But we also need to recognize in that the difficult chronic illnesses that face so many of us are chronic and difficult because they don't confine themselves to just your hormones, or they don't confine themselves to just your immune system. But that your neurologic system and your immune system and your hormonal system and your nerve, muscle, bone, joint, connective tissue system, all of these systems are together in one system. How does chronic disease develop? How does chronic pain develop? let's talk about fibromyalgia, because I love to talk about fibromyalgia because it's so poorly misunderstood, and it doesn't need to be, because we know a lot more than we think we know if we get our heads out of the one system at a time thing, right? A person can have a predisposition from their genetics, from their early life experience, from their experience in the womb, from traumatic events in childhood, from a serious illness in adulthood, or a traumatic event in adulthood. There's predisposing factors and there's triggers. And together they set into action various biological imbalances that interact with each other. For instance, an overactive stress response, an overactive immune response, breakdown in the communication between the gut and the brain, and an overactive stress in the gut that creates leaky gut and dysbiosis and systemic inflammation, shifts in hormone levels, a lot of different things that are interacting like a snowball rolling downhill. And that is a learned process. It's triggered by something, and it can have predisposing factors, but over time the process develops. And what's so important for you to understand is that that process of like a snowball rolling downhill, or a stream flowing down into the sewer or something like that, that's potentially reversible. But it's a learning process, because the system is learning. And just like we have these, like I talked about, we have these set points about your heart rate and your blood pressure and your hormone levels and your sleep and waking and all that kind of stuff. Those things get into a new equilibrium and they get out of whack, where your immune system is just overactive, and your stress, fight, flight, freeze response is just overactive, and your hormone regulation is depressed and isn't functioning as well, and your gut lining is broken down, and you got this vicious cycle of inflammation from your biome and the gut-associated immune system, and you're in a new equilibrium, and your body has learned that over months or years. And when you're stuck in chronic pain and illness, you're stuck in those patterns. So what do we do about that? We retrain the system. It comes down to something like, one aspect of this is neural networks. What are neural networks? Neural networks are like tons of nerves all talking to each other. If you look at your nervous system, it's not just in your brain, it's everywhere in your body. And it's completely integrated with your immune system and integrated with your motor system that moves you through space. It's integrated with your gut and your kidneys. There's connective tissue wrapping. It's so complex and rich. And the sick signaling that propagates through that system can be reversed and turned into health signaling. The neural networks mean that the system learns from experience. Nerves that fire together wire together. Nerves that don't fire together, the connections get weaker. So if your body's been practicing, so to speak, this illness process, you're developing an equilibrium of illness. And if you start to practice well-being, then you're developing an equilibrium of well-being. And that's where mind-body training comes in. That's where exercise comes in. That's where choosing food that's actually nourishing and life-affirming comes in. I'm a big fan of mind-body and body-mind training in an integrated way. That's why I developed this Movement Towards Health program that you've probably heard about, which teaches you a whole set of body, mind, and mind-body techniques to help you learn to move with less pain, with more energy, with better mood, with more confidence. Because it's really about retraining and shifting your biology, taking that overactive stress response and learning to turn it off and bring it towards quiet. Taking the mental emotional patterning and reactivity that we all develop frequently unconsciously. And sometimes it starts with the injury and the post-traumatic stress and the fear reaction and, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And I can't get in the car. And how am I going to feed my family? What about my kids? And all those patterns that we're thinking over and over and over again. And every time you feel the pain, whoosh, this whole pattern of thought process that feeds into the stress, it's a learned process. It's a learned response. Catastrophizing is a mindset that you learn, and it keeps you stuck because it activates your stress response and worsens your pain. It actually rewires your nervous system. Nerves that fire together wire together. So The answer that I'm putting out there is learn how to shift. Shift into the quiet state of mind. Get good at it. Practice it. Get help learning to do it so you actually feel that state of calm and good, and you learn how to do it on your own. Train your compassionate presence to be aware and just see and know. You can call it mindfulness. You can call it compassionate presence. The bottom line, it's about activating the part of you that is aware, that understands, that is able to gain insight, that doesn't get confused by all the reactive thought processes. This one is hard to explain, and it's like you understand it when you do it. Guarantee if you do it, you'll understand it over time. And then the last thing is learning to move with all of that. And moving meditation is a way of rewiring your nerve, muscle, joint, bone movement system, because there's all sorts of patterns in that, guarding reflexes, restrictions in connective tissue called fascia, shifts in joint position and posture. I saw someone today who had a lot of ankle pain because of a surgery that just broke the ankle. Surgery didn't go well, and had pain for 2.5 years and was limping around. And her body is shifted towards the side away from the surgery. And her ankle's good now. We actually did some stuff. Her ankle pain is completely better, but her body still walks shifted. So that's a compensatory pattern. That's a protective response. And she's starting to develop back pain and sciatica because of the way her body reacted to that pain. And I could give you 100, 1,000 examples of different things that happen to a person's body, emotions, and mind, and especially their motor system, as a result of the surgery that went bad, the skin infection or the soft tissue infection, the widespread sepsis with inflammation everywhere, the big stress response, the fall, the trauma, whatever it is. The body, the mind, that complex system with all of its neurologic capacity to learn, learns protective responses that prevent you from healing. Movement towards health is a way of retraining that, of helping yourself learn to move with less pain, with more energy, with a greater sense of well-being and confidence. There's other ways to learn it too. Learn it, do it, seek it out, get proactive, study this stuff, read, watch, listen to the stuff I put online. Find some way to retrain your body and your mind for health, to rewire, to shift into health-oriented patterns, to move towards health, to activate nerves that fire together, wire together in a positive way. And that's part of the process of healing and slowing or stopping or reversing that snowball so you can get back to life. I hope this has been fun. I really encourage you, leave comments or questions. I'm here to be of service, so leave me your questions. Send me a PM. If you want more information about moving towards health, you can find that in the comments. There should be a link to it. If you don't find that, send me a PM. And please share this post because it might help people who also are dealing with chronic pain and difficult, hard stuff. So thanks a lot for watching. Wishing you well.